From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Coming up on AgDay, honoring a tradition by hitting the trails.
We need to keep them alive so we can pass them down so future generations will be able to do them.
A free fertilizer option is coming back to haunt some farmers.
I know I definitely feel bad about it, and I feel sorry, because the farmers, they didn't know either.
Plus, the market continuing to move in the green as China comes back to the U.S. market and tensions rise in the Persian Gulf.
AgDay, presented by the all-new Chevy Silverado, the strongest, most advanced Silverado ever.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. The market's surging again on Monday with two different stories driving buyers. First, word that China has again purchased more U.S. ag products. The USDA announcing a flash sale of 256,000 metric tons of soybeans. That's on top of last week's announcement of a 204,000 metric ton buy, bringing the total 460,000 metric tons purchased in just over the last week. Another big driver for the market, crude oil surging to well above $60 a barrel. That's after a weekend attack on Saudi Arabia's oil installations, disrupting 5% of the world's oil production. Now, a Saudi military spokesman saying initial investigations show Iranian weapons were used in the attack. Iran denies it. Yemen's Iranian-backed Houthi rebels have claimed they targeted a Saudi processing facility and an oil field with drones.
We do have some commodities that are tied directly to energy values. We look at crude oil values, unleaded gasoline, and heating oil. That should hopefully support the ethanol market. We didn't have nearly the same type of support in ethanol early in the week that we did in the others, but it was supported. It was 2 to 3 cents higher during the day. And we also had bean oil rally significantly. And there is a pretty strong correlation between the value of crude oil and the value of bean oil.
We'll have more with Brian and the potential impacts for grain markets coming up in analysis. The Renewable Fuels Association estimating that the U.S. imported 2.8 billion barrels of crude oil last year. And the situation with biofuels could be changing. Reuters reporting President Trump has tentatively agreed to a plan that will increase the amount of biofuel oil refineries are required to blend each year. That's to compensate for those waivers handed out to small refiners from the EPA. Reuters saying under the plan, the EPA will calculate a 3-year rolling average of total biofuel gallons to be exempt. For next year, Reuters calculates that number would be 1.35 gallons. China is continuing to have issues with its pig herd. The country's ag ministry saying its pig herd fell more than 38% in August compared to a year ago. That marks another record drop as the impact of a year-long African swine fever outbreak continues to emerge. A rural Michigan city is now paying millions cleaning up its own waste sludge after a harmful chemical was discovered in it. AgDay's Betsy Gibbon joins us from the newsroom. Betsy, some of those waste solids have been used on farm fields in that area for years.
Clinton, the treatment plant over in Lapeer, Michigan has been giving farmers some of its leftover sewage sludge for years as another fertilizer they can put on. And it's not to mention free. But now that will all have to change.
Is it the end of the world? No.
Farmers in one Michigan community are losing a fertilizer option.
I'm sure that it'll come back to the table. It's just we had to hit the pause button for a while until we can get everything sorted out.
State inspectors tested and discovered a harmful chemical in tainted sewer sludge from the Lapeer, Michigan wastewater treatment plant back in 2017. Those solids were being used for fertilizer. Today, it's still not an option.
We ran a land application program through the state of Michigan, and we would take all of our biosolids. A contractor that we hired would take it to farmers' fields and inject it.
As inspectors found high levels of PFAS in one field where sludge was sprayed. EPA saying the chemical was used commonly in the 1940s in firefighting foams and is now tied to cancer.
I know I definitely feel bad about it, and I feel sorry, because the farmers, they didn't know either.
According to the Environmental Protection Agency, about half of the 7 million tons generated annually in the U.S. is applied to farm fields and other lands, like golf courses and sports fields. It's the same toxin found in wells at Highland Dairy in Clovis, New Mexico earlier in the year. The wells believed to be contaminated by PFAS that entered the groundwater at a nearby Air Force base. The owner forced to dump milk. and cull 4,000 cows.
Just because other states aren't looking doesn't mean that it's not there. PFAS chemicals are so ubiquitous and they have been used in so many applications. We're going to find PFAS anywhere we start looking.
It's not just a topic in farm communities. Congress has been holding hearings on the public health hazard as well.
I have a map here, a map of our country, and this recently released map shows that more than 600 locations in 43 states are contaminated, and those are just the known locations.
Now the community of Lapeer is paying $3 million to treat waste at another facility, and the leftover solids are shipped to a landfill. Reporting for AgDay, I'm Betsy Gibbon.
Folks are getting pretty clever when it comes to those gender reveal parties, as meteorologist Cindy Clausen shows us in today's Crop Comments. Cindy.
Yeah, Clinton. Sarah Jensen of Aurora, Nebraska shared this video. She and her husband are the parents of 4 kids, 2 boys and 2 girls. And she says what you're about to see was the first gender reveal they've ever done. And just look at what her friends put together. Wait for it. The combine putting out a lot of pink shredded paper. What a great idea. That is so creative. Congratulations to the Jensen family. All right, let's take a look at our wind speed forecast today. And the strongest winds are going to be pretty much west of the Mississippi River today. You can see that in the upper Midwest down through much of the Central Plains and over into the Intermountain West, over to Montana, Wyoming, parts of Colorado, seeing some stronger winds as you head through today. And tonight it'll really be northern Plains, upper Midwest that still see those breezier conditions, and then heading into your Wednesday, some of those same areas in the upper Great Lakes, upper Midwest, and then over towards the Four Corners region as well. I'll have a lot more in your forecast coming up, but for now, here are some hometown temps.
Introducing Farm Journal TV, on demand 24/7. AgDay, Machinery Pete TV. U.S. Farm Report on your phone and tablet. Download the Farm Journal TV mobile app today.
It's been an interesting few days in commodity markets. Brian Splitt joins us once again after the break for a read on market movements and expectations for the rest of September. And later, the tradition of quilting presented in a whole new way. Details in the country.
Closed captioning is brought to you by BASF. Grow smart with BASF. We create chemistry.
Most grains continuing in the green Monday. Following last week's rally, can the momentum carry into today? We get an update from the scene.
The managed money or the funds are still short corn. And so that might give us a reason, at least if they come to take back their shorts, or at least their short trades off the table, that could be something that you could see us rally to and go through some higher levels. Now, if you want to talk about levels, we have a gap above in D's corn. It's like 383 to 390, 388 to 393. Keep an eye on that. That's going to be a short-term target for you as you watch maybe these funds cannibalize themselves on the way out. So that's really something you want to keep an eye on if you are a bull. But if you're a bear, boy, this chart doesn't look very good, does it? And that's the problem. We've got surprised a couple of times from the USDA with bigger production and bigger yields per acre numbers. Again, we got surprised at the last meeting, or last USDA. We're going to need to see some sort of news that's going to help carve out a bottom there, because yes, if you're a bull, you'd like the fact that the managed money is still short. You also like the fact that we've got a gap above, but the news has been trickling in that things aren't as bad as we thought, and that's what's kept the lid on this market.
As promised, Brian Splitt, agmarket.net, our guest here in analysis today. Brian, let's talk about the markets. Since we had that USDA report there at the start of September, what's your read here in the last few days of what markets are doing and where they're headed?
Well, one thing, corn specifically, we did have a nice strong reversal. We went down and retested contract lows that were made earlier in the week, held those. Then we closed above the previous day's high, near the highs of the day. So technically that is usually a strong signal that the market has at least made an interim or a short-term low. I think we're getting some support from the events in Saudi Arabia. It was a targeted strike. It seems to be a sophisticated attack against certain points that are going to affect their oil production. So sure. One question is that it, or are we going to be looking for additional attacks to come in the future? But I would like to think that the corn market has shown some signs of strength. And fundamentally, when you look at what the report said, basically we had an increase in the carryout, but that came from an increase in the beginning stocks coming in from old crops. So we addressed some of the demand problems, whether it's ethanol or the exports, but we also did see the USDA reduce the yield. And so USDA did that a year ago where they increased yield in August, and then they took steps to back it down between September, October, November. And so with the big jump in yield that was a surprise in the August report this year, I think the trade may be thinking that as we go into October, November this year, we're going to see further yield reductions. And I think we've seen probably the worst of the demand story already put into the market as far as the balance sheet. So most of the changes in the balance sheet moving forward should be more supply driven, which I think would be friendly to the market.
As we've got just a couple of seconds here, but your read on the trade negotiations, is that positive news or still too early to tell?
It's always too early to tell until we actually get a final decision. Again, it is nice that they're coming back to the table. It's nice that we've seen some soybean business being done by China. We've had talks last week that about 600,000 tons have been purchased by China. We've had a little over 400,000 tons actually confirmed on the ADM news wires. But until we actually have a deal in place, it could just be more of the same where China is just buying when they need to buy. And we do have some concerns that Brazil could be running out of exportable supply, and there's going to be a window that they have to come to the U.S., at least until Brazil's new crop is online.
All right, so many things kind of in play here. Appreciate the insight. We'll be back with more Ag Day and a check of weather coming up in just a minute.
To contact Brian Splitt at Ag Market, call 844-4AG-MARKET or visit their website at www.agmarket.net. The IBM Watson Decision Platform for Agriculture, helping to feed a hungry world with the power of AI.
Portions of South Dakota continuing to deal with record flooding. The Missouri River expected to crest above 30 feet today. The Big Sioux at 32 feet. The South Dakota Civil Air Patrol taking a tour of Hanson and Minnehaha counties and providing these pictures. Flooding from torrential rain soaked much of the southeastern part of the state last week, closing schools, submerging city streets. The cities of Mitchell, Del Rapids, and Madison have been hit especially hard. This is the third time this year some of these areas have been hit by high water. Cindy, just lots of spots around the country getting just dumped on. Big time rains.
Absolutely. And not only from, obviously we've had some heavy rain in the southeast, especially in the Carolinas, eastern parts of the Carolinas last week with Dorian, but we've had some systems in the nation's midsection just pulling lots of moisture. We're seeing these more and more of these heavy rain events coming up. So hopefully we won't see anything bad like that this week. Let's take a look at the map. The main features across the U.S. today will be this low pressure system right down in the Gulf. That's going to be shooting up some heavy rain into southeastern Texas. We also have a low pressure system that's moving into the northern plains and another low pressure system into the Pacific Northwest. So let's put this into motion. Not a ton of precipitation in most of the country. The most that we'll see here is going to be right with our low pressure system. So Texas, as you get into parts of the Dakotas, but still not a ton of moisture there. And then also into the Pacific Northwest, some rain, and we are starting to see some of those higher elevations with a little bit of snow. Heading into Wednesday morning, you'll see some moisture. It's, again, not a ton with this front. Moving into the upper Midwest there, you've got the continuation of some rain in the Northwest, and that low just kind of not making a ton of movement, so we're going to see some heavier rain there along the Gulf Coast of Texas. Through the day on Wednesday, we continue to see that cold front moving a little bit further to the east, picking up a little more moisture as it starts heading into the upper Great Lakes, but we've got this big ridge in place, so a lot of that kind of starts to lose its oomph and more of the moisture heads off to the north. But this is the kind of the big rainmaker as we head through the day today. Over the past 24 hours, it's more so been kind of in the west, but watch as we add on the next 24 hours and see how much rain that at least our model is showing that we are expecting in that far southeastern part of Texas and to the Gulf Coast states there. So some fairly heavy rain along the coast and along the Pacific Northwest as well. Now, as we take a look at temperatures, we've got that big ridge in place in the nation's midsection midsection. So a lot of 90s, even 80s up into the Dakotas and even into a little bit of Canada. It's much cooler though in the far northwest and in the far northeast as well. Take a look at the overnight low temperatures and you see that we keep the 70s all the way up into Minnesota. You've got 50s in the northwest, maybe some 40s as well, 40s and 50s in the far northeast. And then as we head into tomorrow, maybe not quite as warm, but you still have that ridge holding strong in the nation's midsection with the cooler parts in the top corners of the country. All right, let's take a look at that jet stream and see what's going on. That ridge still kind of holding tight. You've got that trough in the northeast and into the northwest. Everything kind of shifts slowly to the east. You'll see that trough starting to dig further to the east. The ridge moves into the northeast, so look for a warm up there. And then we've got a little trough that'll be moving across, especially the northern tier states, into the early part of next week. That's your national forecast. Now let's check on the weather where you live. Sweet Home, Oregon, rain likely today with some morning fog and a high of 59 degrees. House Springs, Missouri, mostly sunny and hot with a high of 90. And Cottage City, Maryland, partly cloudy and cooler, high of 80 degrees.
Cheese prices, they've been on a roll lately, but how long can the market sustain it? We have an update on that and the rising milk prices next. You may have noticed this cheese selling above $2 per pound for a while on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. To give you an idea how significant that is, the block cheese price hasn't been above that mark since late 2014. So how long can it last? Well, experts saying that may depend on the current total of cheese inventories. In July, total cheese stocks were nearly 50 million pounds below levels a year ago. Nate Donne of INTL FC Stone says inventories may recover this month. That's thanks to slower exports of domestic mozzarella sales. Donne says he sees the current price holding into next month, but not much longer than that. And new September production numbers from USDA are raising milk prices. The new forecast calling for growth in milk per cow, which the report suggests will offset lower cow numbers. Production for next year is reduced, and that's based on a slower regrowth of the milk herd, which will not be offset by higher production per cow. And this year's all milk price, well, it's raised to $18.35 and $18.85 for 2020. They're often handed down from generation to generation, and they're an integral part of farm life. Coming up, we celebrate the art of quilting. Next.
Closed captioning is brought to you by BASF. Grow smart with BASF. We create chemistry.
Quilt making is a tradition often highlighted at county fairs in late summer. Well, the University of Tennessee Extension is partnering with a local fair to showcase quilts in a new way. Charles Denny shows us the makings of a quilt trail where both agriculture and history are celebrated.
Pieced together with loving skill, layered beauty, comfort, and history. Ceiling to floor, Tennessee quilts were on display at the Wilson County Fair. Dozens of pretty creations, intricate patterns decorated to the hilt. For fair visitors, it's a must-see stop.
Most of the time when people enter, they say, show me where the quilts are, because that's something that they can remember their grandparents, grandmothers, and great-grandmothers working on when they were little. Everybody likes to have a cozy quilt to snuggle up with. And so coming to see the quilts at the fair is a great family tradition.
It takes time, patience, and a steady hand to bring cloth to life like this.
And just about any heritage skill that you want to see, you can find here.
Wanda Bradell, here crocheting a hat for a cancer charity, says the Wilson Fair is a great place to honor these traditions.
We need to keep them alive so we can pass them down so future generations will be able to do them.
It's hard to say when the first quilts were made in Tennessee, but perhaps before there even was a Tennessee, prior to 1800. Early quilt making was reserved for more affluent families, but in time everyone learned this skill because they needed a way to stay warm. Here scissors cut ribbon instead of fabric, a new way to experience quilts the Wilson way. UT Extension teamed with local leaders and the fair board to lay out a quilt trail through the Fiddler's Grove Historic Exhibit on the grounds. Each year, the fair highlights an ag commodity, and quilts are made to showcase these areas. These are actually framed photographs of the featured quilts attached to buildings, 9 in all.
So it's just a good way to maybe on the off season of the fair and even during the fair have that agritourism aspect and get some people that maybe wouldn't have come to Fiddler's Grove or hadn't heard about it on the grounds and see the quilt trail and then learn about the history of Wilson County and the agriculture in Wilson County.
Quilts observe holidays and heritage. Now the quilt trail on the fairgrounds serves as a reminder that we can celebrate the past in modern ways, pretty and proud. This is Charles Denny reporting.
All right, thanks, Charles. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in, spent part of your day with us. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.